Who doesn't like a documentary, chat? Everyone loves a documentary, you know? Which means the video we'll be watching tonight is old League of Legends versus season 22-23. It was crazy. And I mean, that's the old league I was always talking about. That's why I want to bring back everything to season 3. Season 1, season 2, season 3, season 4. That's why we will try to create a classic server in which we will have a season 3, you know? Because it was crazy, chat. Question is, do you know how crazy it was? I highly doubt it. So let's see. You know, chat, we will educate you.
Man, look at the Hecarim go. This is only a couple minutes into the game and he's already so fast. Wow, that turret only gave 150 gold? What on earth? These days that turret gives over 2 kills worth of gold. Oh my gosh, the starting items. Look at all those potions. He got a mana pot.
And that's the word, chat. This item is the word.
Ah, the double jungling. This was actually the big brain strats back in the day. Dude, do you remember old League?
Yes.
'Cause I do. The game, clunkier. The graphics, uglier. The play...
What do you mean? It was unique. It wasn't ugly, it was unique. Meanwhile, look at the chat. Hold on, I need to move myself. Look at the chat. Chat is going brrrr. Midland teams 10x better than high teams. Shake. Why did you delete me? We're gonna try to esports though. Look at my NA players. Let's start. Thank you, please. Jersey here. Pfft. There's like 3 Hawaiian players in this game. Haha. Yeah, this is very early days of League of Legends.
Players, stinkier, and it just looks terrible. Yet it was awesome at the same time. I really think a lot of people don't appreciate just how much this game has changed. And if you're a newer player, it's definitely changed way more than you already thought. Nearly every aspect of...
Bro. And when we are doing a skin tier list, you all are simping. What if I told you were simping for that?
The game is monumentally different. Wards, runes, masteries, items, champion...
Oh my god, bro, the runes. Show me the runes.
Monumentally different. Wards, runes...
Does he have a 1% attack speed, crit chance? No, because you would manually build the runes, chat. Yeah, what would you do is you would manually buy the runes. You would have them like champions or like skins you have right now in the collection, and you would be combining them into a rune page. There was a bazillion of rune pages. Well, actually, each rune page cost, yeah, 6,300 influence points. Not blue essence, influence points. We were calling that AP back in the day. And there was a cheap little trick everyone was doing, is putting 1 rune in the crit strikes. You would have 1 crit strike chance. And if you're going top side, bro, that was insane. Level 1 you're going for a trade, and you would crit enemies. Well, not always, you'd have only 1% of doing that, but when you crit, bro, they would FF.
Masteries, items, champion abilities, champion reworks, champion pre-reworks. You know how the map changes? Because of course it does. We have elemental drakes. That's a thing, right? It's always been a thing. Heck no, it was not always a thing. In fact, the only way the map used to change and transform was the seasonal maps.
True.
Bring it back, right?
Right, yeah.
League of Legends history is jam-packed full of interesting fun.
Oh yeah, I forgot we had that thing. I forgot we had that fucking monstrosity. Hold on.
Bring it back, right? League.
We had this bullshit. The inhibitor turrets. What a fucking laser, bro. Not shots like we have right now, the standard. I mean, at the very beginning, we had those shots. Then in season 4 or 5, they introduced the laser. Why? Because why not? Because why the cult knows everyone hated it.
League of Legends history is jam-packed full of interesting, fun, and cool, unique things that used to be in the game and no longer are. And to Riot's credit, some things are actually quite a bit better today, and of course, some things are a little worse.
A little, yeah. Let's see which things are a little worse.
Let's take a little trip today down memory lane and look back on some really cool stuff. I can guarantee you that at least one thing in this video you will have either completely forgotten about or never even knew existed. So make sure you watch until the end.
Okay, we can do that.
But before we hop in, this video today is sponsored by NordVPN. If you're still not using Nord, which is the absolute best VPN on the market, then trust me, you are missing out. Because internet privacy protection is required at an alarming rate these days. You've got governments, greedy corporations, hackers, and just plain old guys named Mike trying to steal your browsing data.
King Mike, bro. It's always the Mike, you know?
They want it so badly because they can use it against you, whether through a little bit harmless advertising and marketing, or for much worse, more illegal activities. And you don't want either of those things to happen to you, which is why you should use NordVPN. Let me tell you the best part as well. They have a 30-day money-back guarantee, so if you're not using it as much as you should,
that's good.
No harm, no foul.
That's good.
Right now, you can use my link, go to nordvpn.com/exilvpn and get a 2-year plan plus 4 additional months for free with a huge discount. It's completely risk-free as well with Nord's awesome 30-day money-back guarantee. We all know how much that you should value your physical and mental health, and that totally makes sense. But another huge thing that you should value is your internet privacy and security, and you can start that easily today by using the link in the description down below, or simply going to nordvpn.com/exilvpn. This is a great opportunity to take cybersecurity much more seriously today at an affordable cost. Thank you again to NordVPN for the sponsor. I want to talk...
Why Nord is not sponsoring me, by the way?
About a lot of different throwback stuff. It's going to range from items to specific champion abilities, the jungle, dragons, and more. So if I did leave out something that you want me to talk about, feel free to let me know in the comments down below. I could make it in a separate video and I could continue in this series.
Items. Let's go with the items.
Let's go back first to the year 2016 and talk about jungle.
Oh, it's this jungle. Yeah, season 6 when you had the wolf. Oh my god, bro. The most crazy time for jungle was with that mini wolf.
One thing you will see repeated a lot today is that certain mechanics from this game weren't necessarily completely removed from League of Legends, just tended to move to a different place. A good example is this first item we have here, Hunter's Potion. This is an item I completely forgot about until rewatching some old games. It built out of refillable potion and was pretty cheap. It was similar to Corrupting Pot kind of in the sense that it had charges, but it didn't have any burn. It was a useful jungle sustain item, having up to 5 charges that could be gained back one at a time by killing large monsters.
Because back in the day you didn't have lots of sustain in the jungle, and killing jungle mobs I don't think it was restoring a lot of HP.
It was removed during the mid-season of 2019, which happened because Riot wanted to make the process of clearing jungle much healthier and more consistent. Junglers can survive in today's game without this item because the jungle doesn't really beat you up the way it used to.
True that.
The reason that jungle used to hurt a lot more is that you used to have to make a choice where you could actually start and whether or not you could even full clear.
Well, technically Chicken's still kind of rough start for some junglers.
2 options for the jungle items were Talisman and Machete. Talisman was the AoE burn, while the Machete was better for auto-attack heavy junglers. Anyone who could start the Talisman could effectively clear the Raptors, think Amumu or Hecarim. However, by starting Talisman and not the Machete, taking your Gromp and taking your buffs would require a lot more time and might not be totally feasible on your first clear. Up until literally this patch, junglers did not need this item for the last couple of years, and the big reason for that is that the jungle intrinsically had much more sustain built in. Smiting would heal you, and taking Gromp would heal as well. But now...
Yeah, now they decided to remove the smite heal. Why? Bro, bring it back.
Now that we've all played in the new jungle for Season 13, what's interesting is that we might see something like this return, but it's probably still unlikely. While it's true that the new jungle has less sustain, Riot is looking to buff that base value. They clearly want the system of jungle health to happen automatically through the clearing of camps, rather than being tied to an item, or I guess just in this case, the pet item. And again, that's kind of the pattern that you're going to see today. A lot of things we used to have just happen automatically now as League is much more streamlined. Another good example is the home guard effect. You know how at the start of the game, and when you die, and come late game, you run faster out of base? It kind of seems weird that people have been calling that the home guard, or...
We were calling it the home guard because back in the day, that was a third level up on the boots. First you go with the boots, with the basic boots, then you go with the upgrade, so it can be ninja tabbies, mercury treads, choose your boots, and then on top of that you can select another buff on top of those boots. So that was one of the boots was the home guard, which would allow you to leave the base fast, which is what we see in the video. Every single time you die in League of Legends, just go brrr fast from the base. But there were different options, bro. I remember one of them was something to do with the summoners. Bro, I remember specifically, I don't remember the name, But there was a specific one for Annie, because you would utilize the flash. It had something to do with the summoners, bro. But we had like 4 or 5 of those, bro.
We're saying get your home guards. Why do players have a name for that? Well, that's because for about the first 7 years of League of Legends, home guard wasn't something that was a given or happened automatically. You had to buy it on your boots. Boot enchantments are
There it is. Chat, you cannot see yours because chat trundling. Chat, why are you trundling? I will move you a bit. So we had Alacrity, we had Captain, we had Distortion, we had Furor. That's the home guard. And Teleport. I don't remember the teleport, but yeah, we had one of them is good for Annie. Don't remember which one, but yeah, we had a wild selection of those.
Incredibly nostalgic. After completing your tier 2 boots, you could purchase one more upgrade for pretty cheap, and these would give additional bonuses. The options were Alacrity, Captain, Distortion, Furor, and Home Guard. Several of these things are still in the game today, just found in a different place. The Distortion boots are a perfect example. Buying these was basically like having the Nimbus cloak in Cosmic Insight runes, but combined into one. These boots and home guards were pretty popular, but some of the others were a bit less interesting. The Captain enchantment was essentially just a Janna passive, which is more boring than lightning speed zoomy boots that let you run out.
Additional 15 movements in guard. Show me that one. Hold on, give me I see it. Bro, come on. Bro, there's a sneaky spot in there. Bro, goddammit. There it is. Grants movement speed, Grants, yeah. You were getting movement speed and I feel like your cooldown. Yeah, cooldowns are reduced by 20%. Yeah, that's the one you would use for Annie. Yeah, I still remember, you know? Remember very good.
Which is more boring than lightning speed zoomy boots that let you run out of base. And there's a couple of other ones like Alacrity was just extra movement speed. It was okay on a champion like Garen who could go Swifty boots into the Alacrity enchantment. But other than that, you didn't see it too much. By the way, the Home Guard enchantment was actually a rush item for a couple of champions.
Hecarim?
It was not totally uncommon to see your Hecarim top lane back in 2015 build these first and look for a huge TP play into the bot lane. By building these early game, it was also sort of like a pseudo teleport or Quinn ultimate, helping you get back to lane faster. A beloved item that was removed in the Season 11 item rework was Athene's Unholy Grail.
The only mana item, bro. What mana items do we have right now that actually restore your mana? We have the items that give you mana, but to restore mana, like a themes, I don't think we have it.
Many of you, especially those of you out there that main Nami, will remember this being your go-to support option. It was similar to what we have nowadays with Moonstone, but what you might not know is that this wasn't always your support option that the Enchanter would build. Instead, Athene's actually started out as a mid lane item.
True, with Athene's it had magic resist, so if you are in a tough matchup in the middle, you would rush Athene's because it had magic resist. The other option was Morello. That was one of the first 2 starting items in the mid lane. As a mage, or a mage assassin, ability power basically, straight up ability power. You would rush either Morello, because Morello was giving you mana. I don't think it had, I'm not 100% sure it had the heal removal, bro, how do you call it? Not thorns, but you get the idea. What's the name? I'm looking for the effect. Jesus Christ, that doesn't matter. So yeah, basically you were rushing Morello, or either you were rushing Grievous Wounds. There we go, thank you. Yeah, the Grievous Wounds. Or you would go, if you were in a tough ability power matchup in the middle, you would rush Chalice of Harmony into Magic Resist, and then it is what it is, and you have Athene's Unholy Grail.
2013 to 2015, often this was your first choice as potentially a Syndra or Orianna mid lane. The reason this was so good is that it gave a decent amount of AP as well as a very strong mana passive. Again, we have this system still today. What we have in the presence of Mind Rune now was attached to Athene's. It also gave magic resistance, which is very important because if you're laning against another AP champion in the mid lane, that champion that built Athene's versus the champion that didn't would have a huge advantage. So both mids would typically rush this.
But, I mean, there was one counter to Athene's. There was one item to counter Athene's. It was called the Fire Grasp, which is basically the nuke item. That item had an active, it doesn't matter, you're full tank, you have magic resist, it doesn't matter, bro. All you do is press that active item and just a firebolt into enemy. It removes, straight up removes 15% of the HP and applies the damage taken for the next 2 seconds or so by a ton. So technically nullifying all of your tankiness, all of your resistances, deleting everything, bro. So as Veigar, what you would do, you see enemy Garen walking towards you, 5k HP, full magic resist. You have only one item, you have DFG, you press DFG, you press the R button, Garen is dead.
That meta of building Athenes was deemed a little bit unhealthy from Riot, which is understandable, so then that would be transferred into the Abyssal Scepter meta, which again was a huge part of League of Legends mid lane history, but a lot of people have forgot about it. Abyssal Scepter was meta-defining for several years. It was kind of like this: either you rushed Abyssal Scepter and you could win the matchup, or you didn't and you would lose.
You would survive. Not necessarily you would win the matchup, you would survive in the matchup.
Another thing I forgot a lot about is being able to buy more potions. You know how they're limited to 5 and they currently cost 50 gold? Well, that's a slap in the face to old League of Legends. They were 35 gold each and had no limit.
King inflation, am I right?
A legitimate opening strategy for Mordekaiser. Keep in mind this was the rework Mordekaiser.
It is what it is.
Not even the dragon summoning one, was 13 health potions. It wasn't just about 13 health potions Mordekaiser though. Commonly scaling champions like Veigar, Kassadin, or Kayle could start an item called Crystalline Flask. This was the predecessor to Corrupting Potion.
Yep, it restored mana and HP.
It didn't do any damage or have a burn, but you could buy more potions on top of it. You could go Flask, Health Pots, Mana Pots, and Wards. Buying potions was much more common and more utilized during the early game, and it was a much bigger portion of laning phase. Speaking of Mordekaiser, let's talk about him as well as some other champions and abilities from...
The question is, which rework? Are we talking about the first Mordekaiser, which could have resurrected enemy champions? Which is the most busted thing ever, especially if your bottom is feeding. So let's say enemy team has a 20-0 Caitlyn. As a Mordekaiser, you throw an ult on her, which is a ticking dot. And if she dies while the dot is ticking, Caitlyn resurrects and she's on your team right now. So now you have a 20-0 Caitlyn and they do not have that Caitlyn. So that was one of the sneaky strategies. Or are we talking about the Mordekaiser, which had a tendency to resurrect fucking dragons? You might be thinking, oh no, we have Shelly OP. Sure, but Mordekaiser had dragons.
From the past. During the 2015 Mordekaiser Juggernaut rework, he became Riot's first attempt as a melee bot laner. Their way of forcing him into the bot lane meta was just by making him blatantly overtuned, which is a great way to balance your game, by the way. Also, this dude could summon the freaking dragon. Man, this was a crazy time. On live, Darius's E is a strong and annoying ability to some of you, but trust me, you have no idea just how buggy and BS this used to be. This used to be the most horrendous ability in the entire game. You could dash or flash out of the pool. You would clearly not be in it, and he would pull you anyway. And
in the last video, I said the example of Darius doing that thing and pulling you into his fountain when he was recalling. So yeah, that's the thing.
This would happen all the time. If you never experienced this, you are so lucky.
True.
Nowadays, you guys know Nidalee as a high-skill jungler, and she's not really present in any other roles. However, for about the first 5 years of her existence, she was not a jungler at all, but instead a solo laner. Well, a lot of it had to do with the fact that she didn't have access to her ultimate until level 6, whereas today she has access to it at level 1. When you were stuck in human form, it would have been really difficult to clear the jungle, and her spears did like 3 times as much damage and had 3 times the width on the hitbox, thus making her a very good poke mid laner. And
so that's why I keep missing my Nidalee spears. Bro, I told you, yeah. 3 times the width. See, I knew there's something changed with the hitbox. Like, bro, my spears are still impeccable, it's just only the hitbox is smaller 3 times. That's what happened.
And also a bit of a hybrid bruiser top laner as well. Ever since her release, Lissandra is more or less the same champion. She's always been a pretty strong mid laner and feels pretty good to play, but she's had a couple of quality of life buffs that have been pretty decent. For example, her ultimate, by the way, did not use to heal her at all, and her passive is completely different.
True.
It's still a bit of a weird passive. These ice thralls don't always help you and they can be a bit glitchy, but it's better than her old passive, which is to say that she used to not even really have one. It was a horrendously boring passive, and a game where passives are usually now an entire extra ability. Well,
and then we have Singed. He is fast. That's it.
Then again, Nasus's passive is still this.
Well, shoot that, yeah, live's still in here. But yeah, top lane gets the love it deserves.
There was a period of time where Lux had resets. Her ultimate has always had a pretty low cooldown, but they gave her a buff where getting a takedown would lower the ult cooldown even more, and she could start shooting 2 lasers during one team fight.
So basically Axiom Arc.
Or, in this crazy ARAM clip, 3 times.
Flank not really working out, as the depth charge will be enough, and Zeus gets here on time, and that Tryndamere just not doing damage in the backline. Will be able to take out Faker's clone, but that is it, and that doesn't count.
Something that Shaco, LeBlanc, and Wukong players take for granted these days is that their clone abilities are rather good, especially if the Shaco is playing AP Shaco. It can be very strong if used properly, but as ridiculous as this might sound to a brand new player, the clones did not used to show jungle buffs. If the Shaco or LeBlanc or Wukong had a red buff, the clone would not, making it very easy to discern the real one from the fake.
True that, but realistically, yeah, even though Riot patched it, later on we had the idea where they introduced mythic items, and mythic items, as we know, have an orange border. So there was a period of time where you could have just recognized which clone is the real one and which one is fake. So for example, enemy team has a Shaco and he rushed Duskblade. Duskblade has orange border around it. And if you see that there is Shaco walking towards you without orange border, you know that's a clone. So you run away. But I feel like they patched it back, so now you have no idea in recognition. Now I'm pretty sure it's quite impossible to recognize the real one.
If you don't think League of Legends has come a long way, just look at this Reddit post from 9 years ago. Someone was able to get 91 upvotes saying in response to a question about why the clones don't have buffs, saying, "We don't need buffs," in reference to Shaco not needing to be more powerful. The world of League of Legends is completely different today. If this was somehow bugged out or LeBlanc clones didn't show buffs, and which is really stupid, I agree, it would be the #1 thing complained about on Reddit every day until it got changed. The jungle itself could be an entire video all on its own, as it's been changed over 100 times, but let's talk about this a little bit. What in the world is happening on your screen? Why in this pro game are people who aren't jungle taking jungle camps at the start of the game? As I said, throughout...
Because you didn't need a jungle item to get the jungle experience, so that was a solid strategy before your minions come into the lane. So as a solo laners, or bottom, you would just take those camps freely.
The years, all of the changes to jungle have been very complicated, but I'll do my best to TLDR. Firstly, you did not need a jungle item or smite or anything special to get full experience on jungle camps. Secondly, you did not need to get the last hit on the camps to get experience. The experience that you would get, much like lane minions, was shared with nearby allies, which meant that when you leashed your jungler during the early game, you did have to be careful to not take XP. An early game opening looking something like this was very common and meta in professional play during late Season 5 in the World Championship. The bot lane would typically start something like the Krug camp, because remember, they didn't split up a bunch of times, and the top laner would do what we call double jungling with the jungler, typically following them around and helping them clear 2 to 3 camps, and then what the top laner would do is TP back to lane with a Doran's Blade and 5 potions and level 2. Although it might make sense to you that having a Doran's item and 5 potions would be a big advantage, it still seems a little weird and not worth it because you'd have to waste your very long teleport cooldown. Except the way that teleport used to work is that teleporting to turrets
just casually level top walking around with the blue buff
would reduce its cooldown. It had about half the cooldown it does now during the early game. Seriously. Let's talk about some global objectives. How about...
Like that, this is the dragon I know. This is the dragon we had in original tutorial, bro. Original tutorial was in the goddamn ARAM. That told you how to walk, how to shoot Ashes Volley, how to last hit, how to buy Thorn Mail, and you had to kill the dragon in ARAM. That was the dragon we had. This dragon was the best. Why? Because he didn't have any buffs. The mere objective of this dragon was to give you gold. That's it. You kill dragon, you get gold. Easy.
How about we first talk about dragons? You veterans will remember when Dragon used to give global gold and that's it. But the big question is, what did dragons do between just being a global gold objective and the elemental drakes? Well, back in 2015, dragons were reworked to have some extra bonuses. The stacking was rather linear, where each team tried to just get as many as possible, and these bonuses were interesting. The first dragon stack would give your team basically what Infernal Drake does now, but the second one, if you were able to take it, gave your team increased damage to minions and monsters, which is extremely interesting because we have not seen this in the game since. Sure, it's true we have Minion Dematerializer, but nothing that helps you clear jungle camps faster as well, which is super cool. The third stack was like Cloud Dragon, except the movement speed was not for out of combat, it was just permanent, and the fourth would give you bonus damage to turrets. If you played back in Season 6 and 7, you'll remember this is the old thing that Mountain Dragon used to give, damage to objectives. Finally, if a team achieved a 5th dragon, it was an Elder buff. It was temporary just as it is now and did not have that execute on it, but what it did was triple all your other bonuses during that time, and very similar to how getting Elder in today's game is basically GG, it kinda was back then too.
True that, if enemy team gets it, you just need to survive for 3 minutes, best of luck.
The addition of Elder really helped close out those long games and add in something else to do late game instead of just taking Baron. The final thing I want to talk about today is the most interesting to me personally.
Shelly.
It's Rift Herald, because I feel like the League player base has totally forgot just how much Herald has changed. Even though it wasn't that long ago compared to stuff from Season 2 for example, for some reason people forget that Herald was not always what it is now. When Herald was added on 5.22 for Preseason 6, it was a lot more like a typical dragon type of buff. It granted global gold to your team and a 2-minute temporary buff, which increased your damage by 10%, gave you movement speed, it gave you the empowered Baron recall, and it gave nearby minions some extra attack speed to help
Now this I do not remember. So okay, so there is one thing I don't remember, bro.
push. It's also worth noting that you could get Herald more than just twice because it spawned at 4 minutes and then respawned every 5 minutes.
Big
the reason that
modified,
Herald
yes,
was
sir.
changed is because, well, to put it frankly, it wasn't a very good objective. Sure, the buff was nice and all, but it only lasted for 2 minutes, and most people did not view it as worth taking at the time. You had to bring your whole team there to get the most value out of it. Very quickly into Season 6, it was totally reimagined. Now there was only one Rift Herald spawn because instead of a 2-minute buff to your whole team, it gave a 20-minute buff for one person. This buff was retained on death, so if you did get this buff at 10 minutes, you genuinely had Rift Herald buff until 30 minutes. So what did this 20-minute buff give you? Well, it was supposed to be helpful for split pushing and dueling. It was
Bro, imagine having a 20-minute buff right now in the current meta.
sort of a hullbreaker type of effect. While no allies were nearby, you gained 5% damage reduction and a pretty strong damaging energized effect, which also worked against structures. I remember this being really good for top laners. If you were able to secure the Herald buff splitting for the next 20 minutes, it would feel so much better. You could even win some 1v1s in the side lane that you normally wouldn't if you had the Herald to your advantage. If that sounds
This fucking disgusting laser, bro. Absolutely disgusting, bro. It still gives me fucking PTSD.
toxic or hard to balance or unfun to play against because the Fiora now has a 20-minute Herald making her even more impossible to 1v1, that's because you're exactly right. That's why it was changed, and once again why we have Herald what it is today. What they ended up changing Herald into is honestly in the perfect spot. It's important, strong, and matters enough to grab and push a lead, but if you do trade off a 2nd or even 3rd dragon for 2nd Herald, it definitely comes with a price, which is exactly how it should work. I would say they did an incredible job making sure Herald is a great global objective for the game. Anyway, that's all I have for you guys today. Let me know what you thought of this video in the comments down below. Let me know what I left out, and if you like this type of video, please feel free to give me some stuff and I'll talk about it in the next one. I can continue this series. There's so much in Old League. There's a ton of things that I did not go into, which I would love to talk about. Anyway, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope you're having a wonderful start to your fall, and I'll see you soon.
Well, we're falling in League of Legends. No, but it is what it is. Yeah, one thing I missed in here are the items. I was pretty sure, I was 100% convinced he's going to include at least a couple of items. Like banner, yeah. Man didn't talk about the banner. Yeah, the banner was amazing. The ZZ Rod portal was amazing. DFG. Brother, we had a few fun items. Static Shiv. Well, Static Shiv. Hex Blade. Yeah, we had a Hex Blade. Hex Gun. Yeah, the Hex Gun. Oh my god, bro. We had some items. Bilge Water Cutlass. Anyway, maybe next video. Maybe it's going to be a next video with items. Perhaps. And that's the video right now.